I'd heard of Frank Zappa. Uh, there were some kids that we met one time down in the village, and they were kind of bumming around. And so they didn't have any place to stay, so we invited them up to our apartment. And they were carrying the first two Zappa albums. They were carrying Absolutely Free and Freak Out. And I'd never heard anything. I didn't know anything about rock and roll. I mean, the current incarnation of rock and roll, 1966, 67, except that I'd heard of the Beatles, of course, and the Rolling Stones, and so I didn't really know anything about them. And so, so they gave me this album called Absolutely Free, and I listened to it, and I thought, this is great. I can't believe this stuff, you know, because it was not the usual, you know, rock and roll, it was very interesting stuff. And I thought, gee, that, you know, in fact, I remember when they left the next day, I said, if anybody ever asks me who my favorite rock and roll band is, I'm going to say the Mothers of Invention. So anyway, to go back to where I was before, so about 2 weeks after I'd had that talk with Dick and his wife, Patricia, he calls me up and he says, can you come down to Apostolic Studios Friday? And I said, for what? I mean, yeah, I can, but what do you have in mind? He said, well, just come on down. He said, let me do some playing. And I said, well, do you want me to bring anything, you know, bongos or xylophone? No, he says, we have everything you'll need. So I said, great. So I ran home and told my wife, this is great, you know, I might get some work and we could use the money. And anyway, long story short, so I get down there and I walk in, and as soon as I walk into Apostolic Studios, there's up this old rickety elevator, and I walked in the main room, and there sat, let's see, Ray Collins was there, Roy Estrada, and I don't know if Jimmy was there or not. Motorhead was there. And I looked at these guys and thought, you know, who are these guys? This is, you know, interesting, you know. I mean, the hair and all that, and they're very nice. So they take me back to the studio, and in the studio was Frank, Herbie Cohen, and who was the manager, and this gal named Pamela Zarubica, better known as Susie Creamcheese, although I didn't know that at the time. So we started talking, and Frank asked me what I'd been doing, and I told him about some of my compositions and so forth. He said, well, hey, come here a minute. And he said, would you mind playing a little bit? I says, no, you know, sure, what do you want me to play? It had been several years since I actually sat down and played anything on a drum set, or as you would call drum kit. And so I said, well, yeah, I'll play, you know. But I had been thinking about it a lot, and I liked modern jazz, and I had all these you know, pictures and colors and thoughts, you know, in my mind, drum set wise, even though I hadn't actually sat down and worked them out. So plus I like to play free form, and so I said, do you want me to play anything in particular? And he said, no, just play. I said, all right. And so I sat down and picked up the sticks and just started wailing. He went all over the thing and played all these things. And so I couldn't have played. It seemed like about a half an hour, but I'm sure it was like 3 or 4 minutes. And I finally stopped and I sat down, I looked up. And I remember Frank, there was these baffles around the drum kit, you know. And he standing like this with his, with his arms on the baffle, and he looked down, his mouth was wide open and his eyes were open like this, and he says, man, he says, you're a monster, you know. And I'd never heard that term before, but I knew what he meant. And so I said, well, thanks, you know, that made me feel pretty good. He said, can you play in 5? And I said, in 5? You know, sure. He said, well, you know, just like, you know, cha, cha, cha. I said, yeah, I think I can do that. So I played that and did some, you know, improvisation on that. And anyway, he says, great, great. And he says, wait a second. So he runs out in the front room and he grabs Roy Estrada And he comes back and he said, hey, can you play this and you play this? So we started playing, and I just fell in love with Roy. You know, he was so easy to play with, and he's such a nice guy. You know, just a great guy. And so we played for a while. He said, are you doing anything this weekend? And I said, yeah, we're having a party at my house. I said, a few friends over. And he said, well, he says, we got a couple of gigs upstate New York. We're playing up in Ithaca and up at Colgate University. I've forgotten. And I said, oh. I said, well, maybe. He said, well, he said, we can pay you about $500. And I said, $500? You know, I never, you know, this is in 1967, and that was, you know, that's probably like 5,000 today or something. And I said, yeah, I think I can work that out. You know, we'll work something out. So anyway, that's how it got started. So we did the gigs, and then, you know, we did a lot of touring and so forth, and that's